Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Keiko and I'm a mixed media artist and watercolor paint maker based in Hawaii. In my recent poll here on YouTube and over on my Instagram, I asked you which video you'd like to see next, and you said favorite art supplies. So today I'll talk about my favorite art supplies for mixed media that I've been using extensively this year. And I'm saying this year because two of them are a fairly new discovery, the pan pastels and the Venezia sketchbook. Ooh, it's quite heavy. I will link all the art supplies that I mentioned today in the caption below. Even though I do create art on single sheets of paper and other surfaces, my go-to are still sketchbooks. I do believe that sketchbooks, and especially the inexpensive ones, let you create more freely without overthinking. So, number one, sketchbooks. Even though I use mostly handmade sketchbooks at this point, I still have two sketchbooks, factory-made sketchbooks, that I also use on a daily basis. And number one is by the Dutch company Royal Talens, and those are the art creation sketchbooks. And as you can see, they come in different sizes, and they used to only come with ivory paper, like this one, kind of like off-white yellowish paper. But this year they came out with a new line of sketchbook with white paper. So I should probably show you side by side so you can see that better. So off-white and white. I really like that these sketchbooks are very affordable, and they come, as I said, in a wide range of sizes and different colors. So the ones with the yellowish off-white paper come just with a full solid color, different colors, black, white, red, and then this shell pink, blue, green, all sorts of colors, gold, I think, metallic as well. And then the new ones have some kind of artwork on them, and there's also one with a cork cover. So I have been testing the white paper sketchbooks for a little bit now, but I haven't tested them enough to really talk about them fully. So for now, I will mostly refer to the sketchbooks with the ivory colored paper. They hold a lot of mixed media really well, except for maybe really wet watercolor layers. I wouldn't recommend that. But especially dry media, so colored pencils and brush pens, even gouache, you can use these sketchbooks for. The other sketchbook I'd like to talk about is by the Italian company Fabriano, and I really love Fabriano paper in general, so this was kind of like a no-brainer to pick up. And also, look at the size. It's a pretty big size. It's bigger than letter size or A4. And I used to work in smaller size format sketchbooks, but I really like working on a bigger surface now, so to speak, and doing double page spreads. So this is really excellent paper. It holds different media really well, even watercolor. So these birds here, for example, it's all watercolor. These ones as well, and then I layered colored pencil, Neocolor, pan pastels, and all that stuff on top. Moving forward, instead of me sitting here and like holding all the art supplies into the camera, I thought that I could just show you all the art supplies in action. So we'll create a little spread like this with miniature landscape swatches, and I'll just show you the different art supplies in action. Up next, handmade watercolors. If you've been following me on social media, you know that I've been making my own watercolors since 2017. And these are the ones that I use almost exclusively. I also use other handmade watercolors as well, especially those made by Stacy of Stay Kiwi Colors in New Zealand. She has a lot of hues that I don't have or haven't made yet. We even have our own Instagram hashtag called Aloha Kiwi. And there's an interview with Stacy here on my channel, and I'll put the card up here if you're interested to hear more about the watercolor paint making business side of things. In my illustrations, I usually start with a layer of watercolor or some loose watercolor blobs, as I call them, and then I go in with colored pencil. Which brings me to number 3, water-soluble and regular colored pencils. I've tried a lot of different brands and there are a lot of good ones out there, but for me, there are mostly 3 that I will reach for regularly. Both the Luminance and Super Color 2 pencils are made by the Swiss company CRAYONS. The Luminance are very sturdy pencils, so I've never had any issues with snapping or breaking, and the color coverage is amazing. The Super Color 2, or I think at this point they're actually only called Super Color, are water soluble and a bit softer, just like all the other water soluble colored pencils. The other water soluble pencils I use a lot are by the English company Derwent. They have some really interesting hues, especially the dark husky colors are great, such as dusky purple, iron green, Payne's gray, etc. They're also super easy to use with watercolors. You can mix them with watercolors when everything is still wet. The only downside is that they don't sharpen that well, especially not in a humid and hot climate like here in Hawaii, and they stay pretty soft. It might be different if you live in a dry climate, but for me, these Inktense almost work like soft crayons. Talking about crayons, number 4, Neocolors. There are Neocolor 1 and 2, both made by CRAYONS. Neocolor 1 are just like regular wax crayons, and the Neocolor 2 are the really special ones in my opinion, as they are water soluble. I use both types, 1 and 2, but I have only very recently picked up the Neocolor 1, so the regular wax crayons, and in this video I'll focus on the Neocolor 2 as I have more experience with them and also use them more often. Just like with water-soluble color pencils, you can use these side by side with watercolors, so you can layer on top or underneath, but as they are larger in diameter than color pencils, the Neocolor 2 are great for covering larger spaces on the paper. Also, they're great to create texture when you're using cold press paper. You can use them just like watercolor by taking the paint right off of the crayon with a wet brush, or drawing on a palette and then picking the color up from there. And of course you can use them dry as well, but I mostly use them in combination with watercolor. Number 5, Stabilo Woodys. I picked up the pastel color set about a year ago, as they were all colors that I couldn't find with the Neocolors that I just mentioned. But now I love these so much that I recently added a white, gold, and ultramarine blue Stabilo Woody to my collection. The Woodies are intended for children, and you can draw with them on glass, cardboard, and other surfaces, and they wash off super easy. But for me, I mostly use them on paper. I really like how chunky they are, and just like the Neocolors, they let you cover big areas in no time. They're also water soluble and mix well with watercolor and Neocolor and color pencil as well. The only downside is that with the included sharpener, you can't sharpen them to a point. They always stay kind of flat, so you gotta work with that. Number 6, acrylic gouache. Acrylic gouache is very similar to acrylic paint and also to gouache. It basically uses the same plastic-based binder as acrylic gouache, but it dries really flat and with a matte finish, and usually without texture, so at least less than acrylic paint usually does. Just like acrylic paint, once it's dry, it can't be reactivated with water, which makes it really great to use for background, and then you can layer your other media on top without the fear of reactivating the color of the background. I picked up 4 colors by Turner on my trip to Japan last November, and I love the fluid consistency and quality of color. Very similar are the acrylic gouache by Holbein, another Japanese company. I mostly use these 3 shades: shell pink, pale mint, and blue green. And last but not least are the American Liquitex acrylic gouache. They come in much larger sized bottles that contain 3 times more paint than the Turner and Holbein tubes. I mostly use white and black Liquitex to mix with my other gouache. Number 7, pan pastels. These are my latest discovery. Or I should better say, I've been watching the fabulous Katie Moody, who also has a really wonderful YouTube channel here. So I've watched Katie Moody use them, and even though I thought at first, do I really want an art supply that looks like makeup? I finally caved and bought a set that was on sale, and boy do I love them. They add either a super smooth background, or you can use them to add some interesting texture on top of watercolors or brush pens, and somehow adding the pan pastels just pulls everything together in a painting really wonderfully. Number 8, watercolor brushes. So for these ones, again, I've tried so many different ones, and there are a lot of great ones out there. But for me personally, I really love a more elastic, snappy, kind of firm brush. And I found that in 2 companies mostly. The first one is Kumd, Germany, and I love their memory point round brushes. I mostly use the size 6 and size 10. And the other one is by the Pigeon Letters, also known as Peggy Dean. And her brushes are very similar, but they're more easily available in the US, I'd say. And I especially love the larger size brushes, both round and the filbert brush. And again, depending on what your style is and what media you use, the type of brush that you like best might be absolutely different. You might like softer brushes better. But for me personally, because I come from lettering and I got really used to using these elastic snapback brushes, these are the most used brushes for me personally. Number 9, Ecoline brush pens. These are made by Royal Talens. That's the same company that also makes the art creation sketchbooks that I showed you earlier. What I love about these brush pens is that they have a beautiful color range, including lots of pastels, but also very bright colors. And they're very juicy and are wonderful to both cover large areas quickly, but also great for sketching and drawing. Another feature to point out is that the nib is reversible. You can take out the nib, turn it over, and pretty much have a brand new brush pen. So, more use, less waste. On the same note, these brush pens are refillable with the liquid watercolor of the same brand. You can also dip the brush pen in a liquid watercolor with a different color to create some interesting ombre effects, which is probably mostly interesting for lettering, but I thought I'd just mention it here too. And number 10, the fountain pen Fude de Mannen by the Japanese company Sailor. I use it with a converter, and right now I have a waterproof ink in it. What I love about this particular fountain pen is the bent nib. It's bent at a 40-degree angle, which enables you to create both thin lines and broad lines. This is such a great pen for urban sketching, but also just for taking notes or adding some scribbles to your journal pages. It's also quite affordable, which is another reason I would recommend it. If you have a question about any of the art supplies that I used today or would like to see a video about it, let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you did, and I'll see you next time. And until then, aloha and happy creating!